Jurassic Park certainly didn't intend on becoming as much of a milkable franchise as it turned out to be. Beginning the first episode with the largest land carnivore ever known left very few options to top it in the sequels. Because what's more frightening than a T-Rex? Well, as Jurassic Park 2 explains, two of them. But by the third iteration, it would have been too obvious to simply add in more T-Rexes as the principal antagonists. They needed something different. Enter Spinosaurus, a fresh new terror that would even defeat T-Rex in a symbolic takeover to become the new apex Hollywood monster. And this is how most of us were introduced to the largest known carnivorous dinosaur, yet its discovery dates back to the early 20th century. And despite Jurassic Park 3 being lauded at the time for its accurate portrayal of the dinosaurs, Spinosaurus has since gone through more transformations than Shakira. And just like Shakira, the most reliable source of information about this stunning, flamboyant spectacle is its pelvis. The pursuit of a new model of Spinosaurus has led its researchers and its attentive fanbase alike through a long series of hoops, with each decade representing a shiny new look and a new set of useful information to base it upon. But despite all the changes, Spinosaurus has maintained its position as arguably the most frightening dinosaur that there ever was. So, what did Spinosaurus really look like? In this video, we're going to provide the most up-to-date answer to this question that we can, and we'll lead you through the many iterations of Spinosaurus along the way, including one that was even too big to walk. But at each interval, you'll see that this dinosaur has never lost its allure, and perhaps more importantly, its ability to strike fear into our imaginations. Join us to see if something unexpected has evolved. 1915 was a good year for paleontology, this time for Africa. South Africa named an iguanodon found in a well. Tanzania came up with a Jurassic Stegosaurid, and all the way up in Egypt, a previously unknown sail-backed carnivorous theropod made its first appearance into the scientific literature. Dubbed the Egyptian spine lizard by its discoverer Ernst Stromer, Spinosaurus aegypticus was at this time identifiable only by a lower jaw and some impressive neural spines. But immediately, this was a frightening animal. Stromer reconstructed a monster of 7 meters tall and over 9 meters long. From the meager fossils, it was only sensible that Stromer depicted something that was more or less like the other giant theropods, bipedal, powerfully jawed, and with skinny little arms on top. The only obvious difference between Stromer's drawings and, say, a T-Rex was the big old sail on its back. There's only one photograph of this fossil in existence, as around 30 years later it would be destroyed in its home in Munich Museum by British bombers. This has left us with only the photograph and some depictions from Stromer's notes to go on. For decades, the Germans' notes on the lost holotype were all we had of Spinosaurus, but for a few scattered bones here and there. Illustrations from this time remain comical in hindsight, but Africa brought forth more evidence in the 80s and 90s, with Moroccan fragments suggesting a closely related species, which was aptly named Spinosaurus maroccanus. At this time, the toothy remains, embedded in a long, narrow snout, were a little more conclusive, and the first solid evidence for at least a part of this animal had come to light. It was probably a fish-eater. Well, this changes everything. A tall, upright monster isn't really the best design for eating fish. Perhaps this was a semi-aquatic animal. In 1983, a new species in the now-established Spinosauridae family was discovered in England, Baryonyx. This Spinosaurid had no sail, but seems to have been the first such fossil to provide arms, which are still missing from Spinosaurus. And in 1998, Supermimus from West Africa joined the family. This one had a lower sail on its back, but a prominent one nonetheless. It also had the characteristic narrow face, a crocodile-like head, and long grasping claws on powerful, short forelimbs. By Jurassic Park 3 in 2001, the long snout had become lore, but the fish-eating wasn't as cool, so instead, Spinosaurus became the brutal nemesis of the terrestrial T-Rex, battling it out on land. This was essentially a mixture of the concept of Spinosaurus filled in with some bits and pieces from its better-known relatives. But Jurassic Park wasn't far off for its day. Not long after it went to theaters, more Moroccan skull finds reinforced the fish-eating hypothesis. And in 2014, it was discovered that Spinosaurus would have had very different hips and legs than you'd expect from a terrestrial animal, bringing its body form closer to the ground. Short hind limbs, a long torso, narrow hips, and proportions unlike other large theropods led to the assumption that this was far more aquatic than was previously thought. It may not have been terrestrial at all. In 2020, the most striking evidence of an aquatic lifestyle emerged, a flat, paddle-like tail. And this made Spinosaurus the first known swimming dinosaur, perhaps capable of much more than just wading through the muddy shallows. And this is about as far as we've reached with Spinosaurus remains, but theoretical discussions and deeper dives into the fossils we have continued to modify the shape of this dinosaur. And we'll come to that in a moment. First, let's talk about a recent paper from 2020 that implies Spinosaurus was a lot further reaching than was previously thought. Spinosaurids have been found almost all over the world except for North America. It seems like this was a vast and diverse family of terrifying theropods, and as the discussion moves along and current fossils are investigated in even more detail, the range of the Spinosaurus genus has come into question. In 1999, a South American Spinosaurid was dug up in northeastern Brazil. In 2011, it was described as a new genus, Oxalia. This was a large beast, an estimated 12 to 14 meters long and between 5 and 7 tons in weight, the largest Cretaceous theropod known from Brazil. In 2017, Oxalia was pegged as the closest known relative to Spinosaurus, alongside another Brazilian genus, Angatarama. A year later, another arrangement was put forward, with Oxalia being bumped one clade further over than Spinosaurus. But this 2020 paper has suggested that it could in fact be a specimen of Spinosaurus. The researchers are unconvinced that the minor differences in tooth arrangements between Spinosaurus and Oxalia were enough to declare them separate taxa, and they suggested that these differences could easily fall within simple individual variation. Their paper put the idea out there that Spinosaurus would therefore have had an impressive range, and that it perhaps could have traversed the distance between Africa and South America during its time on the planet, when the two continents were very much closer together than they are today. Unfortunately for this hypothesis, further studies have rejected it, asserting that the differences in the Oxalia specimens are fundamentally more aligned with other Brazilian genera than with Spinosaurus. Unfortunately, by 2018, the specimens of Oxalia that were housed in the National Museum of Brazil went up in flames, along with the rest of the building, and almost 20 million museum pieces were lost. Considering how scarce and fragmented the fossils of all Spinosaurids appear to be, this is a huge setback in our understanding of the family. And this sums up a lot of the back and forth between researchers around what Spinosaurus was really like. Before we come to the most up-to-date vision of this mythical beast, let's summarize some of the things that have changed over the years and some of the things that have stayed the same. And just before we get to that, we just want to say thanks for supporting the channel, and please consider clicking the like button to bump us up in the algo and subscribe for more upcoming videos. With Spinosaurus, it's a far smaller job to list the assumptions that didn't change since its discovery than those that did. From the start, this dinosaur was known to have a long, narrow snout and exceptionally long body to back it up with. It was also assumed to have had a huge sail on its back, and while, as we'll see, the shape of the sail has changed over recent years, everything else here still stands. The idea that this was a fish-eater and therefore would have lived in or at least around water is a pretty early one too, and this has also survived the decades of changes. Aside from these fundamentals, though, pretty much everything else is now different. One huge problem with the Spinosaurus genus in particular is that there have been no fossils found of its arms. Other related genera give a clue as to what these might have looked like, but Spinosaurids are being shown to have been remarkably diverse in their range and habitats, so finding a nice pair of Spinosaurus fingers would go a long way to answering many of the remaining questions. But there are still quite a few pieces of convincing evidence to go through while we wait for somebody to find these. First, the 2014 specimens from Morocco were the first clear clues as to Spinosaurus's back legs. The pelvis bones, being the most truthful bones of all, dispelled any lasting impression that this was a terrestrial monstrosity that could stand up tall and put T-Rex in its place. Both the hips and the legs are a lot smaller than they'd need to be for this, and would lend themselves to a less bipedal and more aquatic lifestyle. In fact, some have even suggested that this animal was too heavy to walk on land with such small legs. In 2022, Spinosaurus bone density was the focus of attention when it was determined that particularly dense bones in this animal would have aided it in diving and staying submerged for prolonged periods. These are adaptations that we see in water birds like penguins and mammals like hippos and manatees, who have also adapted to more aquatic environments. This is in stark contrast, too, to the air-filled bones of other large theropods. The paddle-like tail also was described in 2020 for the first time from the most complete Cretaceous theropod fossil ever found in North Africa, and the conclusion was truly groundbreaking. This wasn't simply evidence that Spinosaurus could swim. It was evidence that this family of weird dinosaurs had managed to overcome the coastal competition from the Pseudosuchian crocodilian lines and dominate aquatic ecosystems as well. Finally, Spinosaurus's sail has gone through some modifications over recent years, from the classic Dimetrodon-esque arc to what is now commonly depicted as a flattened arc or a sort of M-shaped dorsal sail. The real-life design isn't known yet, and it looks as though this new sail representation is an artistic influence rather than a scientific one, based on damaged neural spines from partial fossils. And the same can be said for images of webbed feet, which, while they make sense for an aquatic animal, have yet to be evidenced in the fossil finds. So, what's the closest thing we've got to an accurate Spinosaurus body type today? Well, the good news is that unlike certain marine monsters whose size has been dramatically redefined as less intimidating in the wake of new discoveries, Spinosaurus is just as large as it ever was. In fact, it might even be bigger. Using the largest known Spinosaurus skull, a 2024 paper made an estimate of size that ranged from 16 to 18 meters long. Not only was this thing larger than the biggest land theropods, it was significantly bigger than any crocodilian known. And just to see how huge they got, check out our video on Dinosaurs, linked in the description below. So, while the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus was the definitive Cretaceous apex predator of our era, we now know that Spinosaurus had very little in common with this depiction, yet somehow it's even more frightening now. Spinosaurus may have been long and heavy and an aquatic swimmer with a terrifying bite and a deeply intimidating sail on its back. Think of the dorsal fin on Jaws and multiply it by about 7 tons. Spinosaurus was the largest known theropod, and it wasn't just scary for its size, but for what it accomplished. In a world where monster crocodilians and mosasaurs and plesiosaurs dominated the waters, it showed that, given a few more million years, dinosaurs could well have been the dominant force in every ecosystem on the planet. So, at every stage of its discovery, Spinosaurus has remained terrifying, and in many ways even more so as we learn more about it. And this feature of Spinosaurus isn't lost on the Jurassic World franchise, who, in the upcoming Jurassic World Rebirth, will be answering the question, what could be scarier than a Spinosaurus? 3 of them. That's all for this video today. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.